Lark. This is Hashrocket TV, and we are here with Mr. RSpec himself. Did they call you Mr. RSpec?
No, I didn't actually write RSpec. I just maintain it. So.
Mr. Maintainer, Mr. RSpec Maintainer, David Chelimsky. And I guess we'll start with the easy question. How do you feel about the conference?
It's been good. I haven't gone to a ton of sessions. I've been just getting together and hacking in the hallways with people and whatnot. There was one session that I went to. There were a few sessions actually that were probably not the sessions everybody would think were the most awesome sessions, but they answered questions for stuff I'm doing at work now. So that was really helpful. Like, so the session that Rich Kilmer did on authentication across multiple services within one enclosed system. Did you hear about that, or did you see that?
I didn't.
So he's got a gem coming out called Arrest. It's like 2 A's, authentication, authorization, REST. Right. And it kind of encapsulates everything. So you get syntax that looks kind of like can, or you could say user.can with a question mark, blah. But all the grants are managed through a separate service, and it's really very clean and easy to use.
That sounds really smart. Yeah.
So.
So that was the talks from this conference. Can you put this conference in context? Like, how does it compare to the previous ones, or where do you see it going? You know, what does this RailsConf mean amongst all of them?
Well, amongst all of them so far. So I want to say this, but it sounds much more negative than what I mean, but it's a lot less exciting than the previous conferences. And I think that's because the community's matured, right? So people are using Rails now. A lot of the talks have been more about, instead of being about, you should use Rails and here's why it's awesome, it's like, okay, now that we're all using Rails, like, what are some of the problems that we actually encounter, and how can we make it better, and how can we improve our processes and whatnot, and that kind of thing. So to me, that's actually very exciting, because it's fun to sort of jump around and be all excited and stuff, but it's a lot more fun to have conversations that have more impact, I think, if that makes sense.
Absolutely true. Yeah, it definitely feels like we're doing the thing now. You know, like we have a, dare I say, mature industry, like you said. But one of the things I was talking to Matt from Thoughtbot about, he thought that the next frontier might be in Agile itself and the way we manage our projects. I don't know what kind of project work you do or how you manage them, but do you think that maybe that's the next step of growing up and getting mature, is in the project management realm? It's okay to say no.
No, well, I have to think about that, because I've been involved with the Agile community for longer than I've been involved with the Rails community. So for me, it's sort of, they're the same. I mean, it's different communities, but...
But that's not the talks we're seeing. Like, do you feel like the Rails people have to catch up to the Agile people then?
I don't know. So like the talk that Aslak and I did was about acceptance testing. So there's, that was a process talk. It was a tutorial. There wasn't too much of that, but we've kind of done something like that every year. So I think there's a little bit of a taste of that. But are you talking about more high level, like how you manage iterations and all that kind of stuff, or are you talking more about developer process?
I think all of the above for that. I feel like since we got our technology house in order with everything except maybe like extreme scaling, it feels like the next thing to get in order is to, since we have the right tools, we also want to develop well in the evolving the ecosystem of our very development, so that we as developers can do our job on the technical side and leave the project side to the project people, or we can better interface with the projects. I don't know. I'm saying this mainly because that's where we're struggling at Hashrocket to improve. Like, all right, we test all the time, we communicate all the time, we're using Tracker, but the next frontier is like bringing that spirit of Rails in and having that inform the way we manage our projects. Am I making sense?
You are. I don't have too much to comment on it, though.
It's all right. We can always cut the middle part if it doesn't sound smart. I wanted to talk about your tutorials. Are the Cucumber tutorials, is that something you're going to keep doing, or is this the first time, or how did that go? Where does that fit?
Yeah. So I've done, Aslak and I have done tutorials on here at RailsConf on TDD before. I think this is the first time we did a Cucumber tutorial, and it went. I believe it went well. It went well for us in that we had a bunch of points that we wanted to make, and we got them all across. The questions that came back were great. We had a lot of really good questions, and there was some good discussion, and we got through all the material.
Always a bonus for a training session.
Yes. in terms of doing more, I'm sure between the two of us, we'll do more. Aslak's in Norway, and I'm here in the States, so it's not something we can easily do to get together. I did something at the Windy City RailsConf last year, and that might happen again this year. I don't know yet, but the conference is. But yeah, so.
Well, speaking of Cucumber, I think maybe that's the place to end is Cucumber and then RSpec too. But wanted to talk about the overall adoption of Cucumber, and like I'm a Cucumber lover, and like T Pope is too. But then we got other people who are still resisting it. I wonder how the good fight of Cucumber is going overall. Do you have any feel for how the community is accepting it?
Well, I think there's pretty wide acceptance that it's a usable tool. This is something we talked about actually in our tutorial. It's not for everybody. Some people really just prefer to be inside Ruby and stay inside Ruby, and that's perfectly valid. The like 3 versions back before Cucumber came out, there was RBehave, which was all Ruby. And so recently, some people have written some all Ruby versions of Cucumber. It's like, oh yeah, we did that a few years ago, but we like the plain text thing was the great new horizon. But then a lot of people, it turns out, would rather just stay in Ruby. So there's that. There's also like, it's going to work differently on every team and every project, right? And even people who like to use this tool, maybe it makes sense to use it on one project because there's a customer that's actually interested and participating, but on another project, the customer just wants you to take care of everything, at which point, if you're really comfortable with Cucumber, great, and if you're not, and you're only doing it because of the communication value with the customer and you're not getting that value out of it, then you should use whatever works for you.
That is exactly the same answer I would have given.
Okay.
That's great. Yeah, we find it ends up being project per project basis, and like the adage is, if no one's reading your Cucumber, don't write it.
And in a situation like yours, right, where you guys are trying to have a pretty much repeatable process, that becomes an interesting problem because, there's only so much that you can repeat every single time.
And every client is a unique snowflake,
right.
and I mean that. I guess we should end on RSpec too. Maybe not just the technical details, but is there a story there? Is there a passion of the RSpec to be told, or has it just been a pretty easy process? Or
well, I wouldn't say that it's been a hard process. There's been a lot of work to do. So over the years, a lot of people started using RSpec, and there was a lot of criticism of it as well for various things like the size and the complexity of the libraries, and this sort of stuff, which is all valid. One of the things I wanted to do was shrink things down and separate them out. And Micronaut is a library that was written by Chad Humphreys at Relevance, and it is basically an RSpec 1 compatible runner. Didn't have all the features. It had a core set of features that Chad was interested in and the people at Relevance were. So it naturally has grown a little bit because there's more features that we've had to put in, but basically we pulled Micronaut in as what's now RSpec Core. And so with RSpec 2, you've got RSpec Core, which is like describe it and all the aliases for those. Expectations is should and the matchers, and mocks, and all 3 of those are in separate libraries. So if it's really easy now, if there's one part of that you like and there's other parts that you don't want to use, it's really easy to pick and choose what you want. The most common example of that we supported in RSpec 1 was the mock framework. Right, a lot of people like to use Mocha and RR and FlexMock, and that's all super easy to do. You don't get the benefit of the generators if you're using Rails, right? But maybe generators in Rails are so easy and great now that I'm hopeful that someone besides me will come up with generators that do all the scaffolding, but with the different mock frameworks, right? So that's been really nice, and we're starting to build up more of a contribution community than we've had in a while, because the code's actually quite a bit easier to work with now, and except with the Rails framework, right? So that just complicates everything because you have to have all of the pieces, and so there's a lot more potential environment issues to come up with. But if you just want to work on RSpec Core, you've got a very small Git download and not much else that you need in place. So
Would you say that's the thing you're most excited about with RSpec is just the tightening down of it, just the tightness of the refactoring?
yeah, I'd say that. Yeah, just ease of use.
And then what you talked about contributing, like, are you going to keep doing hackfests?
Yeah. So we've been doing in Chicago. We've been doing Hackfests, uh, like a couple of times a month, and we've been hosting them at Optiva, and we hosted one at DRW, and I've talked to Josh, and we're probably going to host one at Hashrocket in Chicago. And yeah, I definitely want to keep that up because I want to use it as a way to build like face-to-face local community around it. So.
Where's it going in the future, man? Where do you see RailsConf going? Where do you see the Rails community going? What are you looking forward to overall?
Wow. Okay, so having just seen Uncle Bob's talk and been hearing a lot about the functional programming stuff for a while, what I see with Rails is like, so there's this whole NoSQL movement, right? And as with all things in our community, there's this total like no SQL ever. And I think there's been a couple of sessions here about how to blend SQL for relational data and document formats for document formatted data in one app. And I think we'll see more and more support, and that'll become an easier, more natural thing in Rails. I think what we're also going to see is some sort of rack adapter for functional programming languages so that you can write middlewares in other languages that have to do
where it makes sense for performance or something like that.
Exactly. And I think a year from now, that's actually going to, someone will make it so that that's super easy to do. And I think that'll be a really interesting direction to see how that goes. So.
Rock on. Thanks again for the interview, man.
Sure.
And we'll see you at the next one.
Okay.